name is June Allen from juneallen.net, and I teach black women how to heal from addiction to self-hate with racial sobriety and personal empowerment. So if you don't know my story, I came into doing this work through my own journey to heal from self-hate. I went into 12-step recovery in 2009. I went to my first meeting, and I realised that recovery is not just about drinking, drugs and alcohol. It's also about addiction to people, addiction to misery, addiction to drama, addiction to dysfunctional situations. And I realised through going through that process that I was actually addicted to people that were unavailable, people that were abusive, and that was very, very painful for me to realise. I just kept finding myself in these relationships that were unhealthy, that were not good for me, that were very, very codependent. I was very codependent in relationships, and I didn't know how to get out of them. I didn't know how to take care of myself. So that process was very powerful, and I learned a lot from it. But what was missing from that situation was the whole concept of what it means to be a black woman and to be sober, in the sense that, as a black woman, I'm still living under the system of racism. So, that's when I started, using the term racial sobriety. What does that mean? Racial sobriety means that I give myself permission to stand in the power of my blackness, to nurture the relationship that I have with my blackness without apology. And so when I started to do a lot more reading, I started doing a lot more work in therapy, working with a black therapist, talking about this stuff. I began to feel a lot more confident about who I was as a black woman. I started having more conversations with other black people in recovery that needed to define this stuff, to be able to explore the link between addictive behaviours and racism, the pain of living under the system of racism. And people started to identify it and started to understand it. And so the more I started to have these sorts of conversations, the more I thought, you know what, I need to be having more conversations with more people about this stuff, which is why I set up this website and started talking about it in a lot more detail. And that's why I ended up here with you today. So I'm kind of sharing the message, continuing the message, because this is stuff that I just can't keep to myself. It's important that I share this stuff to let people not only kind of identify with what I'm talking about, but to share tools and solutions, and to share my experience, strength and hope around how you can actually live a more sober life when it comes to racism. And you don't have to live in that kind of survival mode that so many of us do. So that's a little bit about my backstory. So today's topic is all about how can you keep your emotions from taking over your daily life. So if you know anyone that might be interested in this topic, if you know somebody that you think is quite emotional, or finds it difficult to deal with their emotions, then tag them, share it with them if you think they might be interested in it. So I have 3 requests on this broadcast. Number 1, if you don't understand anything that I'm saying, or if I say anything that is difficult for you to kind of grasp or anything like that, so just write it in the comments. So that you don't understand, ask me to explain something, because at the end of the day, I'm here to try to empower you, trying to educate you, trying to give you the tools and everything that I've learned to take care of myself over the years. And I want you to be able to understand this. I want you to be able to get what I'm saying. If you feel uncomfortable about writing it in the comments, which sometimes, I understand that this stuff is not always difficult to discuss. So if there is something that I say that you feel that you want to know more about, but you feel uncomfortable about writing in the comments, send me a direct message. It doesn't matter how simple the question is. There are no silly questions. There are no stupid questions. Send me a direct message, because I want you to get this stuff. I want you to understand it. I want you to feel empowered around this stuff. So don't feel just send me a direct message. Any questions at all is absolutely fine. That's number 1. Number 2, obviously, if you know someone that's struggling with the same issues, share it with them. And number 3, if there is stuff that I'm saying that you identify with, that you understand or whatever, drop that in the comments as well, so I know that I'm on the right track with this teaching, so that I know that I'm teaching you something that is valuable, that is useful. Hi, thanks for joining. So those are the 3 things. So let's get into the content. So today's topic is all around how do you keep your emotions from taking over your day-to-day life. Now, when I first saw this question in the Facebook group, it made me think about, well, if your emotions are overwhelming you so much in your daily life that you're finding it difficult, it quite often means that you're not paying attention to them. You're not paying attention to them. And emotional intelligence, emotional sobriety, if that's if that's how you want to call it, is all linked to it's like learning a new language. It's like learning a new language, and you have to be willing to take the time to learn that new language. It's not just something that is just going to happen out of the blue. You have to be willing to understand your emotion, to kind of start to explore that part of your humanity. For us as Black people as well, the whole concept of emotions and all of that kind of stuff is difficult for us because so many of us have been taught that emotions are wrong, that you're too emotional. Quite often we shame each other for having emotions, or we think that somehow that we're supposed to be we can't honour that part of our humanity. And I personally believe that this comes all the way back from the slave plantations, and as a result of living under the system of racism, because we've always been taught that we're not allowed to have feelings, we're not allowed to be angry, we're not allowed to be sad, we're not allowed to be any of those things. All we have to do is just keep quiet and do as we're told. We keep quiet and do as we're told. Be the mules of the world, be the mammy for everybody else, for white people, but we're not allowed to have any emotions of our own. And if you think about it in terms of what happened on the slave plantations and stuff like that, we could lose our lives if we showed emotion. And I think a lot of that stuff has been passed down, that to show emotion is or to not show emotion is kind of like a survival technique. It's a survival technique, and we've passed that down. We've got to the point now where so many of us are so disconnected from our humanity, so disconnected from our emotion, that when we do show it, it's kind of it's intense emotion. Or if somebody else shows emotion, we can't tolerate it. We can't tolerate it because we're so disconnected from our own. So, as Black people under the system of racism, we have been taught to suppress, to deny, to internalize and kind of swallow our pain, to swallow our emotions. So that means that a lot of us are emotionally numb. A lot of us are emotionally disconnected from our humanity because of what's been passed down. How many of us have been told, when we were growing up as children, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, or even as adults, I've seen people do it on social media, shaming other Black people for being quote unquote too emotional. These are all ways that we continue to oppress each other, to suppress our humanity, to deny our ability to connect to each other through emotion. And this is why it's so important to understand that, in order to get through this, we have to find ways to be able to start to honour that part of our humanity. If we're going to go through this healing process, you cannot go through the healing process without, being honest about your emotions, and being honest about the fact that maybe you do feel overwhelmed by your emotion. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you need to pay attention to what's going on. So there are 3 ways that you can actually manage your emotions on a day-to-day basis. And the first one is that you have to start learning how to listen to your emotion, not to think about how you can ignore them or deny them or suppress them or get rid of them. The first thing that you have to do is learn how to listen to it, to be self-compassionate, to start to honour the fact that, yes, I am a human being and I am allowed to have emotion. Hi, Katrina, thanks for joining. That it's okay to have emotion and it's okay to feel emotion, but it's about learning how to do it in a way that feels safe. And I think that so many of us don't want to feel emotion because it's become unsafe for us, because somebody's going to show, or somebody's going to tell you off, or somebody's going to tell you that you're being too emotional or whatever. There's kind of like a negative thing around feeling your emotions. So a lot of us don't want to do it. We feel afraid as well to do it, because when you don't honor your own emotion, it becomes more intense. As human beings, your emotions are there. They're your body's way of telling you that something's wrong, or that you're happy, or that you're sad, or that it's part of the human experience. It's part of the human experience. But a lot of times for us as black people, because we're so used to denying our emotion, we don't understand them. We don't understand them, and so we become, they become dominant in our lives, and they take over our daily lives because they're not managed, because they're not understood, because we're not self-compassionate with that part of ourselves. So we end up just responding, so not responding, we end up reacting from a place of emotion, because we don't have a relationship with our humanity. We don't have a relationship with our emotion. We just keep reacting all over the place, and that's because there's almost like a pressure cooker type relationship that's happening now, because you've got no relationship with that part of your humanity. And so your emotions are just going to take over. You are just going to keep reacting to people, to places, to things, because you're just so disconnected from it, and it builds up. It builds up because you're not respecting that part of your humanity. So it's important. And I put up a post on my Facebook today talking about, when other people shame other people or try to silence other people because they're quote unquote too emotional, it quite often means that they're really disconnected from their own emotion, and they can't tolerate it. They can't tolerate somebody else being emotional, because it kind of stirs up their own feelings. It stirs up how they feel about stuff, and they don't want to feel it. So this is why it's so important, to start to find or to create your own sister space on a daily basis, to be able to start building that relationship and giving yourself permission to start to feel these things, to start to understand your emotion. You're not going to understand your emotion until you give yourself permission to feel it. You heal by feeling. I always tell people, you heal by feeling. If you're not willing to feel anything, you ain't going to heal. You ain't going to heal. There's only so many books you can read. There's only so many lectures you can go to. There's only so many, spiritual things that you can, retreats you can go on. At the end of the day, you've got to give yourself permission to be able to sit with yourself and to be able to honor that part of yourself in order to do the healing process. Otherwise, it's just not gonna. It's just all up here. It's just all intellect, and you don't heal by thinking about things. You heal by actually feeling it and going through the actual process. And this is the second thing, the second way that you can actually manage your emotion, is you've got to process your emotions daily. Any black person or any person of colour that lives under the system of racism, you've got to be honest about the fact that every single day, consciously or unconsciously, our boundaries are constantly being violated. If you turn on the news, if you go on social media, if you pick up a magazine, newspaper, whatever it is, and it's all, even if you go on a tube, like, there's constant imagery that is telling you that, black is bad, black is oversexed, we're violent, with this, with that. All of these negative images are going to have an impact on how you feel about yourself, which is going to trigger emotion. It's going to trigger anger. It may trigger shame. It may trigger fear. Those are the three core emotions that I believe that are triggered as a result of living under the system of racism. Because we feel angry because we feel powerless over the constant boundary violations. We feel fearful because we feel powerless. And we feel shame because quite often we internalize what is thrown at us on a daily basis. And if you're not doing this, if you're not processing this stuff on a daily basis, because white supremacy is hammering us with that stuff on a daily basis, if we're not counteracting that on a daily basis, our emotions are going to get stored up, and then we're going to get over emotional, like I was saying before, and react to this stuff. So you have to, we need to be doing the self-care, doing the self-love every single day to counteract the fact that we're being oppressed every single day. And one of the three of the ways that I advise people to, or that I suggest that people deal with this stuff, is kind of do it in 3 steps. You've got to find a way, number one, of discharging all of the energy, because emotion is really energy. That's all it is, energy. And we have to find a way of releasing the energy, transforming the energy, so that we can stay balanced. So you need to discharge the energy by doing physical stuff, by going to the gym or going for a walk or journaling or whatever it is, depending on how intense it is. The more intense the emotion, the more physical it needs to be. So let's say, for an example, if you're feeling rage, if you're feeling anger, then, or if I'm feeling that, I may go to the gym and do some hardcore cardio, or I might go into the bedroom and beat some pillows. You know, if I'm feeling that intense anger, you know. So that's an example of one, a couple of examples of what you need to do to kind of discharge stuff out of your the energy out of your body. The next thing is to reflect. Once the energy is discharged out of your body, then it's time for reflection. So you can, again, if you're journaling when you're angry, then it's what I call rage journaling. You're just literally cussing out in your journal. If you're journaling to reflect, then that's a lot more measured. That's a lot more, you might be free flow writing or whatever comes up. So you can begin to understand what your needs are. You can begin to understand, the feelings that are underneath the anger. And then the third thing that I'd say tell people to do is to, you've got to nurture yourself. You've got to nurture yourself. You've got to practice those self-love rituals. That stuff is really, really important. I do have a new ebook that I've written, actually, which is basically it's 30 tools for racial wellness, and there's 10 of each. 10 to discharge, 10 tools for reflection, and 10 tools for nurturing. If you click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. There's a link there that will take you to the ebook with those 30 tools. So the three things: you need to discharge, you need to reflect, and you need to nurture. Those are three things that you need to maintain your racial wellness on a daily basis. So that's number 2. And the third way that you can manage your emotions on a daily basis is remember that you're not by yourself. You're not. Quite often, a lot of us feel so much shame and pain around the fact that that we even have emotion, or that our emotions are so intense that we can kind of shame ourselves into silence. We can shame ourselves into thinking that, well, nobody else thinks like this, nobody else feels like this, so I don't really want to tell anyone or say anything because I just I feel embarrassed by it, and I don't really want anyone to know that I feel so emotional or whatever because somebody's going to say something or do something. I can't tell you how many times that, when I share a lot of this stuff on social media, or I share a lot of this stuff, in my trainings or whatever, that people always think that they feel this way by themselves, and they don't. They're not on their own. You are not alone. So it's important to get yourself into a safe space. Find a safe space. Find a recovery group or a support group or a great therapist, or a spiritual group, or whatever it is that feels safe to you. And when I say a space that feels safe, I mean a space that has got boundaries, that is non-judgmental, that is not going to shame you for your opinions. It's not going to shame you. That has boundaries, that allows you to speak from your heart without judgment from the rest of the group. And this is one of the reasons why I have such strong boundaries, or I've put them in place for the book club, because I also understood that in order for people to be able to heal and to share their truth and be honest about how they felt about certain things, that space had to be safe. That space had to be something that was non-judgmental. That space had to be something where, people weren't going to be shamed for having an opinion or having feelings, or if somebody started to cry or whatever, that it was okay, that the group was going to embrace that and give them the space to process their feelings, and for the rest of the group to be compassionate to that. And what I noticed in that space is that once the ladies understood that it was safe to feel their feelings and to feel emotion and to be honest about how they felt, it started to build a lot more intimacy between the sisterhood, and it started to build trust. And women began to recognize that, they start to realize how unsafe it was in so many other spaces that they've been in, because those boundaries were not in place. So it is really important, if you have a safe space, that you do feel comfortable to be able to express yourself in a way that you're going to be, that you're going to be nurtured, and that you're going to feel heard, and that you're going to feel seen. So those things are really, really important. If you're interested in coming to the workshop on Saturday, It's 5 minutes from Bond Street in London. You can go to the link in the bio, heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. And those boundaries is for black women only. So yeah, just remember that mirroring is so powerful. If you've never been to one of the workshops before and you would like an opportunity to kind of get a taste of it, when you go to the link in the bio and you go to the Sister Circle page, there's also an opportunity for you to download a free e-guide, reflections, some journal prompts as well from the first session that we did. It's going to help you explore your black femininity, and we'll have a conversation about why doing the heart work is important, how to use the questions to the best of your ability, so that you get a little bit of a taste of it. And then obviously if you want to, you'd also get an opportunity to get into the live session for half off. So click the link in the bio if that's something that you'd like, that you'd like to give an opportunity to try it. Yeah, so those are the three things. Those are the three ways that are important for you to manage your emotions on a daily basis. So I'll just go through them again. So the first one is you've got to learn to listen to your emotions, and you just got to honour them. You've got to honour them. You've got to respect the fact that you're a human being and that you deserve the right to be able to express your emotions in a safe way. Number two is you've got to have a process. You've got to have a system in place, a self-care process in place, a ritual every single day to counteract the fact that we're being oppressed every single day. You've got to be able to you've got to have a space to be able to discharge the energy that may come up from the anger, the fear, the shame. You've got to have a space to be able to reflect through your journal, and so you can understand what your needs are, what's underneath it. Quite often, if it's sometimes the things that we overly emotional about are not often the things that we really are emotional about. It's often about something else. It could be something that's historical, not necessarily something that's happening in the present moment. But you won't know that unless you're doing daily reflection. So find a space, create a space for you in your daily life to be able to reflect. And the last thing about processing is to nurture. You've got to nurture yourself on a daily basis. You've got to do that in order to feel good about yourself, to kind of counteract the fact that we are being oppressed every single day, internally and externally, be it your family members saying stuff or externally through the media or whatever. You've got to discharge, reflect and nurture. That is how you're going to maintain your racial wellness on a daily basis. And the third way to deal with your emotions on a daily basis is to remember that you're not by yourself, and don't feel shamed into silence. And if you give yourself permission to reach out and join the group or find a therapist or come to the workshop on Saturday, you will realize that you're not by yourself, and that is going to reduce a huge amount of stress. Just knowing that you're not by yourself and that you don't have to process this stuff by yourself. Once you see the mirror, once you get that mirror from other people, that you're not by yourself and that other people feel the same, that is such a beautiful thing. That is such a beautiful thing to be able to experience that and know that you're by yourself, because then you don't have to feel so isolated all the time. You don't have to feel so isolated all the time. So so those are the three things. So if you know somebody who is interested in what I've spoken about today, who you think that does struggle with their emotion and needs some support, tag them, send it to them, send this live to them, and just share the love with them, because it's all about us healing at the end of the day, and it's about us being able to support each other and share what tools that we can use to kind of to help us to progress and to bring us home to ourselves and to our communities and to each other. That stuff is so important. So if you've got any questions or anything about anything that I've shared, you can drop them in the comments. If you watch on the replay, you can drop them in the comments or send me a direct message and I will deal with those. I'll obviously contact you back and deal with those directly. Also, please drop your comments. What will you be taking away from the session as well in the comments, or drop them in my DM. I love getting messages and stuff from you all. So send me a message of what you've learned from the session. So that's it. So thank you so much for joining me today. I do not take for granted that you've chosen to spend time with me, so I really, really appreciate it. If you would like to join me on Saturday, I'd love to see you. So click the link in the bio, heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Thank you so much for joining me today. Your sister is now signing off, and I will see you tomorrow. It'll be around 1:30. I've got my therapist appointment tomorrow morning, so hopefully I should be back in time. But it'll be around sort of 1:30, 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be doing another live. So I will see you then. Okay, take care. Bye.